Did you ever have the experience in your childhood of growing up feeling like you could never do anything right in the eyes of your family? Maybe you were met with constant blame and criticism. Or maybe you felt like even when other people were the ones that caused the problems or made the mistakes, you were the one that was actually highlighted for them. You were the one blamed for them constantly. Maybe you also felt like when you did achieve something, it was undermined, and there was this sense of feeling excluded from your family in different forms. Well, if this sounds like some of your childhood experiences, there's a decent chance that you were the scapegoat in your family. So, in today's video, if you want to discover whether or not this might have been you, we are going to cover 6 major signs that you may have been the scapegoat in your family system, and we're going to talk about what this is and where this actually comes from. And at the end, if you stick around, we'll also talk about what you can actually do to take your power back, to heal and to grow after going through this consistent sense of tribulation in childhood. So, first and foremost, the scapegoat is a family role within a family system where the child or the individual who's scapegoated all the time is essentially unfairly assigned blame, criticism, and also often held responsible for a lot of different problems and conflicts in the family, even when those conflicts are not particularly their fault. And of course, as a result of this, there can be a lot of emotional distress and psychological consequences for somebody growing up in this family system. Now, oftentimes, but not always, the scapegoat exists within a family dynamic where there may be other family roles. There may be a golden child in the family or an invisible child in the family. And there can be other dysfunctional family roles where essentially children are given these sort of identities by how they're treated, because so much of how we're repetitively treated creates our own conditioned idea of our personality, of who we are, right? If you're constantly criticized, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to internalize that and grow up feeling like, I'm not good enough. So, because of this, often these family systems that have this dysfunction of polarized roles within a family often have a parent in that household who may be struggling with narcissism, alcoholism. There can be a lot of different sort of pathologies that can create such a split and polarized family dynamic. But of course, those are not only the cases that can create that, they're just often the most common. So if you see some of this dynamic within yourself already, we're going to cover these 6 major signs. And I want you to really take note of which signs were most prevalent for you, which ones came up the most frequently in your childhood, because knowing exactly which ones of those 6 there are will help you on your first step to using the tools I'm going to provide at the end of this video for healing. Also, if you're new to this channel, by the way, my name is Thais. I am a counselor, a coach, and founder of the Personal Development School, and have been making a lot of content on YouTube here for quite a while. But prior to this, ran a very busy client-based practice for the better part of 10 years, and now produce a lot of content for a lot of students inside the Personal Development School. So, first and foremost, one of the biggest signs that you may have been the scapegoat of your family is, as I mentioned in the intro here, you may have felt like you were constantly being blamed, but not just blamed in a way where, like, when you made a mistake, it was really magnified, but more that you can even be the one singled out when there's a big family issue. So let's say there's an argument and everybody in the family is arguing. Maybe there's 2 parents and 3 siblings. And rather than realizing that everybody's arguing with each other, you might be the one singled out and blamed. So you might be the one that's getting looked at going, well, this is your fault. If you didn't start the situation, none of us would be arguing right now. And in some cases, you may actually find that it's like the twilight zone. You may actually feel like, what? Like, how am I the one being blamed for this? And feel so overwhelmed and confused by the situation. And again, this is a really big sign that you may be the scapegoat of the family, particularly if this is happening in an ongoing manner. This isn't a one-off. This didn't just happen one time and you remember that instance, but this was something that was happening regularly. Number 2, feeling like you were receiving disproportionate criticism from other family members. Okay. So maybe, everybody comes home with a B on their paper, you and your 2 other siblings, maybe at slightly different times, but when they, get a B, it's like, okay, you did your best, good for you. And a B is not a bad grade, by the way, but often this is a very common dynamic in families, where somebody will get a B and, oh my gosh, why did you not get an A plus? And you may actually find that there's almost a different way that you feel treated from your other family members. So you may find that, other siblings got a B, no big deal. You got a B, and you got, really criticized for it, maybe even spoken to in kind of a cruel or very critical manner. Oh, you're not smart enough to get an A plus. These things that are like these, people can kind of cut you with their words, and you may feel like there's this really sort of disproportionate sense of criticism from your family on an ongoing basis. Okay, this brings me to number 3, which is that you may feel like there's kind of an imbalance of positive to negative attention that you're receiving in general from all members of the family. So you may feel like there's actually more negative attention taking place than positive attention within your family system. And this is not just going to be from the parents, often because the parents sort of determine the roles of the children, especially in larger families. You may see that the children are essentially being conditioned to also treat you like that, right? So you may be let's say you're the middle child, for example, and you have your older sibling and your younger sibling, as well as your parents, kind of giving you more negative attention than positive. Maybe constantly like joking around, but in a way that kind of puts you down. Even when you do have accomplishments that you're proud of or things you're excited about, you may feel like those things are sort of glazed over, like you're not getting the positive attention that other children are getting in the family system. And so you'll feel like this negative, positive attention, if there's scales, they're really imbalanced. And you may find, again, when you notice how other siblings in the family are treated or other people in general are treated, that's not everybody else's experience. It seems to be more unique to you. Number 4, you may find that you are experiencing a sense of exclusion from the family, particularly around things like the family decision-making process, inclusion in terms of attention at family events, even inclusion in terms of parents being able to say like, hey, if parents often will brag about their children, right? So you may see that your parents are bragging about the other children, but not you. And you may even feel kind of excluded from the conversation. And again, a lot of these things are not about you not being good enough. Like, I can't stress this enough. If you grew up in this family system, just so you know what the root cause is before I even finish the next 2 pieces, the root cause is not that you're not good enough or not that you're not worthy of having attention and inclusion and your accomplishments, appreciated and recognized. It's usually that there's certain traits within your personality that the parent or parents within the family system are trying to disconnect from within the relationship to themselves. And so, because you represent the shadow part of the parents, what the parent tries to do is push those traits away from themselves. And in doing that, they push the child away. Now, I'll give you an example because that sounds complicated. If you grew up, for example, with parents who like denied their own sensitivity. Okay. So let's say they made emotions not okay. Maybe they grew up in families that also didn't accept emotionality or expressiveness. So when they had emotions, they were like pushing them down, repressing them, the stiff upper lip kind of dynamic. And then let's say you come into the world and maybe you're a gifted child, but maybe you're also a sensitive child. Because you are sensitive and you're expressing that sensitivity, maybe in your own self-expression, creativity, maybe you're very emotionally aware. A parent who's fearing their own sensitivity because you're expressing their repressed traits, they're going to try to distance themselves from the expression of those traits because they have a negative relationship to them within themselves. This is part of what we call our shadow. And so they'll often try to distance themselves. It's not a conscious process, it's subconscious. It doesn't mean the parent doesn't love you, the child, as much as the other children. It means that they have a dysfunctional relationship to how they're relating to you. And so they'll push away the child as a means to push away those traits that they're trying to repress down within themselves. It's like they're almost afraid of the sensitivity from the child getting too close to them because it might make them feel their own sensitivity too much. And so in this particular case, and I've seen this a lot in different families and with different individuals over the years, that child feels very left out, feels very hurt by this kind of dynamic, but they don't realize it's not about them as a human being. It's not about them not being amazing and gifted in unique and special ways. It's about that there is a dysfunctional relationship from how the parent is relating to themselves that is then getting projected onto the child. So you'll see this sort of imbalance there as a result. Now we have two more pieces, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about what you can do at the end of this. So you may see number 5 sign that there's a lack of support for you. Scapegoats often receive very little support, and this can be emotional support. This can be like practical support, like going to your activities or sports, or going to a tutor, or just a lack of support there. And of course, not everybody has access to that kind of support to begin with, but you'll see by comparison to other children within the family system, you feel like there's less support, even if it's just emotional support or like attention-based support, a parent helping with the homework, things like that. And last but not least, you may feel like there are very harsh double standards. So you may feel like on the one side, you're held to higher standards than other kids within the family system. And yet, when you achieve those standards, again, they're not really magnified or recognized in the same way. Now, what can you do? Well, number one of the most important things you want to do is you want to make a list of like all the things you came to believe about yourself because of being in this family system. So we can kind of do this as an exercise together. Step one is to make a list of all the things you came to believe. I'm not worthy. I'm not safe to be vulnerable. I'm not good enough. I'm unloved. We make these pieces that we tell these stories about our experiences as we're trying to gain certainty and understanding. And sometimes those things can be really painful. So you want to make sure that you're like identifying what those stories are. And then the really unfortunate thing is because you had a parent or parents dysfunctionally relating to you, you allowed that to determine your own self-esteem and your own identity. And that's where we have to stop and kind of take your power back. I will say really quickly, if you want to check out a full course just for free on this, it's called our Emotional Mastery and Belief Reprogramming course. And it's actually about reconditioning these beliefs. I'm still going to give you an exercise here, but if you want to do a deeper dive, you can check that out fully for free, just for a limited time using the link down below. Now, the next part, once you've identified some of these stories that you're carrying about yourself not being good enough or lovable or worthy, is you want to really question them. You want to find tons of evidence to oppose this so that you're not allowing, the dysfunction of how you were related to determine how you feel about yourself and how you show up in all of your present and future relationships. So if you've been made to believe you're not worthy, can you come up with like 5 or 10 pieces of evidence for how you actually are worthy or are lovable or are doing a good enough job? And it's up to you to identify those pieces of evidence for yourself, and through repetition and emotion, repeat them on a daily basis to yourself. Remember them, because what that does is it fires and wires opposing neural pathways to take you out of this old story of yourself, and leveraging repetition and emotion, which is what we need to reprogram the subconscious mind. We can see the new identity of ourselves, where we're not putting how we see ourselves through how we felt like we were perceived, but we're putting how we perceive ourselves and what we think and feel and believe and how we show up in life through the filter of what we are able to see, not what somebody was seeing us through their own dysfunction, but what we are able to see and identify within our own selves and character instead. And doing that through repetition and emotion is a very important part of moving the needle forward in your healing journey. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider subscribing to this channel. I put daily videos out here all about the subconscious mind, reconditioning, attachment styles, and healing. And I would love to have you as a part of our community. Thank you for watching.